ॐ उत्तप्त हेमरुचिरां रविचन्द्रवर्णी नेत्रां धनुःसरयुताङ्कुशपाशशूलं रम्यैर्भुजैश्च ददतीं शिवशक्तिरूपां कामेश्वरीं हृदि भजामि धृतेन्दुलेखाम्. Namaskar.
I've been listening to all these prayers as prelude of your talks for several years now. And it's such a privilege that I got to hear it sitting next to you. So thank you so much, Acharya ji, for this privilege. Welcome to the White Rose magazine. And to start with, I want to start with just a very basic fundamental question. White Rose magazine stands for truth, beauty, reason. And one of the articulations of the divine in Sanatana Dharma is truth, consciousness, beauty, Satyam, Śivam, Sundaram. So how do you think truth, consciousness, beauty plays a part in your life as well as the work that you do?
All these things are latent in all of us. From the Hindu perspective, truth, beauty, life permeates every single thing. Even life. Because from the Hindu world perspective, we do not have an entities bereft of consciousness. And life is one station, basically, one manifest mode, and it evolves just like youth. And we get old the same way there is death, but there is no end to consciousness. But there is like sometimes it manifests in the body and we have life. So the same way beauty, we strive for it, but beauty is truth too. Satyam, Śivam, Sundaram. So this Satyam, see, what is Satya? This is Satya, Tyatcha. Sat is the absolute. You can call God, you can call Shiva, Brahman, that is Satya. But that Sat is also Tyat, this is the manifest world. Satya is not only the transcendent. Satya has Sat, Sat and Tya. So Tya is this, Sat is that. Only when that and this are together, there is Satya. So we do not compromise this for that. We live this. Our body is here. Our body is part of our soul, our Atman. And we cannot find the Atman completely separated from our body. Because what is Satya? Satya is the fusion of two horizons. Satya is where we live the self. And this living part comes the world, our social reality, our cultural reality, our linguistic reality, our being in the world. Meaning, I do not separate our being in the world from Satya. Within the very word, I see Sat as the transcendent, absolute, formless, nirgun, or even in manifest forms. And the Tya, that is where the form comes. That is where qualities come. So therefore, how to live in Satya, how to be embodied, how to manifest through different modes. So all of these things constitute Satya. So that very mode of manifestation, that very experiencing with Satya is what gives us the sense of beauty. When we are not experiencing the modes of Satya, we are not oriented towards beauty. We are only picking Tya, only from the Satya, only half of it, the external world, the manifest world, phenomenal world. And that is where we cannot fully appreciate beauty, because beauty is integral. So somebody offers you the most delicious dish ever, and you are so stressed because you are waiting for one project, and that very day, that very hour, you got the news the project collapsed. You do not taste the taste. somebody takes you to the beautiful music and you are struggling inside your heart, dealing with this disastrous project. You cannot appreciate the music. So, being one in the soul and the body, it's necessary for us to recognize the truth and recognize the beauty. We cannot have one and not have the other. People talk about the self, Gyan, Atma Gyan, whatever. What is that? Can you have that Gyan without having any your physicality? See? Having the body is necessary even for you to reject the body. You can reject the body if you are already without the body. There is no body coming here and say, I reject the body. And who doesn't have the body? Our physicality, therefore, is primal for us to maintain our being in the world and or discovering the truth and then discovering beauty. So I don't like to completely separate these domains. Thank you.
So the statement, one statement that you said, that you cannot compromise here for there, that's a very, very profound thing that we have heard in a long time now, and that is quite kind of, I won't say contradictory, but kind of very different from what the notions that people have about spirituality. So I'll come back to this question once again, because this is really something very profound and something that we must understand very deeply.
Yeah.
So before moving forward to other questions, I personally have been following you for many years now, and I'm quite aware of your life journey to a great extent. But for our viewers, can you just describe your journey in brief?
It's not really a journey if it is just unfolding. When we say journey, we have some vague idea of where we are going. To tell you the truth, I've never known that. I left home at the age of 12 and I honestly didn't know where I was going. Or before that, I grew up in a Brahmin household family where my father taught me the Vedas. And when I was 6, my father established a Shiva temple and said, from this day on, you are the priest. So every day I maintained worshipping Shiva. So that led to me at the age of 12 realizing I need to go somewhere for my education. Because those days in villages, the best you could get was my father's home school, where other village kids also came and they could read and write, basic literacy school basically. And then in Kathmandu, I learned with gurus and teachers, mostly in Sanskrit medium. Then I went to Benares because everybody said Benares is the best place to go for learning Vedanta, learning Tantra, Agama, every single thing. So I spent a few years there. Then I realized that because I come from Nepal, and so I realized I should have the department there established, because in India there are so many programs. And then I went and struggled for a few years. It was like a trap because I could see that within myself how it is eroding the zeal, the energy, because the whole social institutions, academic institutions are not ready and supportive for the kind of activities I like to do. And when the entire society is not ready, the only thing you can do, go to forest or cave and do meditation. But education is a social activity. You need society, you need students who want to learn these things. So I just felt like I need to get out, and then I went to Germany and eventually to United States, and for the last 25 years almost I've been there teaching and doing my writings, and that gives me solace in the sense that I am free to write the topics as I like to write and free to teach what I like to teach. So the administration, educational institutions there are not repressive for the scholars, for the researchers. They let you to grow and they support. Their job is not to control you. Their job is to help you and promote you to whatever type of research you want to do. And that is an immense freedom that I felt. And I know that in India also good institutions are coming now. And I do believe that we'll have one day maybe even better institutions in this regard, but that is the only way to go, that the educationists, the researchers need to have their space to think freely. Otherwise new thoughts can't come. Thank you.
Thank you. So one handicap that all ancient wisdom traditions suffer from is that there's a lot that goes away in being what is called as lost in translation, right? Because in order to convey our wisdom to the rest of the world, we have to speak their language.
Yeah.
So, for example, when we use the words like mudras or yantras, they loosely are translated as symbols. And then we start taking it as if they mean symbols or gestures. And very symbolic, very representative. But mudras and yantras are far more than symbols. They actually create that energy. Right? What they're supposed to do with whatever, like through their geometry or the interaction of the 5 tattvas and whatever way, but they're actually creating those energies. They are not representative of any energy. Right? So how, for example, even the globally famous now Namaste, and like the foreigners are very fascinated by this, and they understand that it means the divine in me salutes the divine in you. But it's actually much more than that. It's actually balancing of your left and right energy channels coming together. And it's actually creating the energy of reverence. It's not just representing reverence, it creates reverence. It creates that calmness, that respect, that reverence. So how do you look at the importance of mudras, yantras, and all other kind of symbols or tantric art? What is the relevance of that?
Yeah, you raised a question that I have dealt with, not just as someone belonging to culture, but as a scholar. The reason I wrote Language of Images is simply the way the Western world has given primacy to speech, because God speaks to Abraham. So ours, gods are seen, sakshatkar, darshan. People go to darshan, not talk, not to get the word from God. Let me go and get the word from God. Let me go and have darshan. So we have two different modes of encountering the divine. And in this type of encountering the divine, how do these representations, these symbols work? We have to rethink. And the fundamental defect of the way the language in general is viewed, and the way we are translating everything from our heritage like Vedas to Tantras into English language, the defect is, number one, to think that language is representative. If there is a truth outside of language, representation means that, it's a medium. It's insignificant. Why it is insignificant? Because the word car is insignificant compared to the car. When you say, oh, this is your car, somebody gave you the car, and then the word car doesn't mean much. You go to the car, your own car. That is what it means, because the words are insignificant. The reality is outside. Car does not, you cannot sit inside the word car and drive around. You have to be in the car. So therefore, our understanding of language as representative is problematic. It does not represent the Vedas, because it doesn't represent the mantras. And so they are viewed as transformative, creative, constitutive. And so that is one problem we deal with. I'm not saying nothing should be I actually spent a whole life trying to translate it. We have two types of situations. One, we need to communicate. Some things are communicable. Other things cannot be communicated. Tell me how many dancers can really communicate every mode in words to teach their students? It is conveyed by the gesture. The dancer picks up by picking up the gesture. If you had to describe one single gesture in human language, it would be very difficult. You have to have the bhav, you have to have the particular modes of moving of the fingers and every single thing, right? But the dance teacher displays and the dance student follows. Many other things, swimming, bicycling. You don't read a book to learn swimming. It's just like it's embodied knowledge. So we have a completely discredited embodied knowledge at the cost of this intellectual knowledge. Our ancestors focused a lot on embodied knowledge. Let me give you another example. To memorize the books. To memorize is to embody knowledge. Actually, I had this encounter of two civilizations when few years back I went with my children to the Everest base camp. They had kindly gotten a Kindle for me, and when we were in our first station, spending a day or two, and then they realized I didn't bring the Kindle, and they were so sorry for me that I would have nothing to do because we were not climbing, we needed to rest for a day or two. And I told them, look, I walk with books, I breathe books. You guys need to look into Kindle to be with the book, but I'm always with books because I have memorized all that I need to know. This is a type of concept that's being so alien in a single generation. And so this is to embody knowledge and to have the transformative role of gestures or language. So I have worked both as a scholar and as a practitioner. I have also felt the energy of these transformative modes of knowledge, you know. So yeah, Tantra has broadly these transformative aspects of language that any translation would never suffice. Never. Like, and then even when we have some translation, then one word will lead to 100 words type of translation, and that's not translation in a real sense. But that doesn't mean that we should stop translating into, because we have also the need in this modern world to be understood, and at least not to be misunderstood. And it can happen only when we let the outside world see a tiny bit of what good we can offer to the rest of the world.
So one point that you said about memory being embodied knowledge, right? And nowadays you see a lot of stuff becoming very fashionable, like people saying that I don't want to memorize, I want to understand, right? So in fact memory is quite frowned upon. And a lot of such opinions are backed by research, right? So in general, what I believe is that the Western psychology, the way it has grown, it's not only inaccurate, it's very misleading and quite dangerous in many ways, that it's actually stripping people of the basic cognitive abilities, right? So how do you see that Tantra can play a role in providing the accurate understanding of human cognition and prevent this kind of what I definitely feel is the misleading of humanity through that whatever research they call? Because most of psychology research is that their study was conducted on 1,000 people and 200 people responded this way, and so that's the normal behavior, which is not how cognition should be understood. So how do you think Tantra and you could play a role in like preventing this gross misleading of humanity through in the name of research?
So one of the biggest problems of the latest generation is a total decline in attention. If we had the span of in average 15 seconds for any concept to stick to human head, now we are looking into about 8 seconds. We have roughly lost, in the past 25 years or so, we have roughly lost 50% of the capacity of our attention. This is a big thing. As an educationist, what do I find? when our students are not able to consistently attend any of the things we are teaching, they are not going to be able to learn, So number one, it's about attention. Number two, what constitutes us as us is our memory, because I have autobiographical memory of who I am, and the same way. So when we are paying so little attention to memory, what is happening is we are not forming a type of solid historical self. And so then also the third thing is about the way we view imagination. Because in the modern culture, imagination is flimsy, unreal, has no consequence, and completely out of the boundary of scientific rational thinking. Imaginary is countering the real. So therefore, fantasy or reality, we have the paradigm. But imaginations do create real things, in psychology at least. If someone imagines that he's haunted, he is going to have fear. Someone imagines that there are ghosts, he's going to have consequence of his imagination. So imagination, when we say imagination is not real, maybe when we are talking about outside world, but when we are talking about inside world, imagination has as much effect, that like placebo effect. The person imagines getting drugs and it works. So from attention to memory to imagination, we have to reconstitute ourselves to know who we are. Even if you think of your physiology, you have two hemispheres, and one processes more like speech and logic and other images. So what is happening is systematically we are repressing and declining the particular faculty of the brain that processes images, and because it is based on imagination. So that is meaning we are half the cognitive as we could by simply choosing to not utilize some of the faculties we have. Like if you just like the Mahabharata character, if you just close your eyes and just refrain from seeing anything outside, then you'll lose your sight, you'll not see anything. So that is what we are doing, that we do have these faculties, but we have chosen to be numb and dumb about it, and that is hurting our cognitive capacity. So what Tantra can do, because any tantric practice requires an integration, a synthesis of mantra with mandala. Mandala is something you view, it's an image, and mantra is speech. And then always the mantra is integral to the mandala, mandala is integral to the mantra. And then they both go to bhav, the particular mood you are supposed to generate. And so these practices do have a real actual cognitive consequence, and in a big positive way, that we could enhance the capacity of attention, we could filter the memory. Many people like having such ideas about memory that it's like so dark, and we have all the repressed memories and we have to get rid of it. The person who is constantly dealing with memory will also have the memory, but they will stop haunting him. Like it's not about ignoring, blocking them, suspending from the flow of thought. It's not, you are aware of it, but it doesn't have the episodic characteristic, and that is why it's very different. And then finally, imagination. Are you having healthy imagination or harmful imagination? Because the fantasy is all about there being some good quality imagination, and some others are really bad imaginations. So if you have if you know how to use the faculty of imagination towards good quality, then you have definitely a healthier life, more productive, creative life. Because for any productivity, for any creativity, you need the faculty of imagination. Anybody who can't imagine cannot create something new. So you see, then that's a cultivation of imagination, is also cultivation of creativity, unblocking, opening the channels of creativity within oneself.
Thank you. So Acharya, your primary spiritual path is around Tantra, and there's something paradoxical about Tantra, especially in the perception of people, that on one hand, as we understand, Tantra is very inclusive, very affirmative of life, and actually it has the right tools of transformation for the modern day man. But on the same context, the way people perceive Tantra is that it's very kind of outrageous philosophies which people are not very willing to accept as a spiritual path. Primarily because people are more not used to that freedom that Tantra gives you. People more want strict discipline, and like they want to be led, and they want to be told what to do, and they want to be told to follow a very strict regimen. So while Tantra is spreading right now, I don't see Tantra becoming a mass movement anywhere in the near future. But at the same time, Tantra is something that the world needs very badly at this point of time. So how do you reconcile this paradox? And further to this, do you really feel that there needs to be a mass awakening for the planet to awaken? And how do you take this? That do you go for mass awakening of people? Do you want more and more people to become spiritual in like millions and billions? Or do you think that a group of people who are extremely awakened can awaken the whole planet? So do you work with the mass? Do you want to work with the masses, or do you want to work with the chosen few who are extremely committed?
So yeah, that's a tough question. There are two things in the question as I can see. Number one, the perception of Tantra and where does it fit, whether the society is ready to have it. And then the next is to what extent we can disseminate tantric knowledge to the world. The first is the projection in society about Tantra. How can Tantra be spirituality, be something you could call religious, when it lets you do whatever you like? Because people are told that spirituality or religion is to give you a guideline of how to live your life, what to drink, what to eat, how to have sex or to not have sex, and even including some people is like which direction your house should be. And the way spirituality is understood historically is like a rope, and treating humans as animals. And what Tantra said, you have freedom. And what people understood, oh, Tantra tells you to drink, Tantra tells you to eat, Tantra tells you to engage in debauchery, Tantra tells you to do all the forbidden things. Tantra does not tell you to do anything. Tantra doesn't tell you to not do anything. Tantra is simply telling you that it means not. What Tantra is saying is like what people think generally is there is like, let's say, complex mathematical problem, and what people are saying is you can solve this mathematical problem if you are wearing a tie and or you are wearing underwear. And Tantra is saying it does matter. So, and then people say, oh, how dare you say you don't need to wear a tie or not need underwear? Because solving a mathematical problem has absolutely nothing to do with you wearing a tie or not wearing a tie. That's all Tantra is saying. Because all these things that are called spirituality has absolutely zero value when it comes to realization. Drink, don't drink, nobody cares. Eat, don't eat, nobody cares. That is like I don't know, like it's like solving math problem, really, you know. Is it easier to solve math problem if, you know, you are standing or if you are sitting? I don't think these corporeal conditions. Is it easy to solve math problem if I'm wearing a white shirt or a red shirt? That's all Tantra is saying is bullshit. These rules are bullshit. And Tantra is not saying, therefore, you have to follow another rule. To drink also becomes a rule, a dogma. To eat meat becomes a dogma. Oh, you have to. How can you be a tantric? You are not even going to cremation ground. So what they are understanding, these people cannot awaken out of these rule bound structures. That is called Pashu. Pashu is not just beast or animal. Pashu is pasha. You know, in Sanskrit there is like word called pasha, means tie, like a rope. They can only think within their rope. When we say there is really no rope, they scare. Tantra is scary. Because, and Tantra is not saying you don't have to follow any rule. Like you have the constitution, you follow the constitution and you don't go and whack somebody else. You have a consequence for that. And then, what if? So, Tantra is neither telling you to abide by constitution nor, but in the sense of self-realization, your constitutions are a document of space and time. They change. So these rules are made by the people that want to abide by those rules. Tantra is saying that all Tantra is saying is that these rules are not absolute. When Hammurabi gave the rule, when Manu gave the rule, they gave the rules. It doesn't matter. We don't follow by those rules. But what the other people are saying when they speak against Tantra is they assume that there are some absolute rules that our society has abided by all the time. It has never been the case. Rules have changed all around, in every society. So for Tantra to say that as long as you are rule bound, you are just rule bound. Then what if I am not rule bound? Then I will do a lot of bad things. That is them thinking, because they have the fantasy. My book tells me to not kill anybody. I only wish book didn't tell me like that. I would go and whack somebody. My book doesn't need to tell me that. I would never go and hurt anybody. It's not because the book is telling me or not telling me. So I have to have the realization of my Shobhava. That's why Tantra focuses on what is your intrinsic nature, what is your Shobhava. And Tantra believes in Swatantra. Swatantra, the freedom that allows you to have the blossoming of your pratibha, your creativity. And then that creativity allows you to have the blossoming of your Shobhava, the intrinsic nature. And what is realization? That for you to realize your innermost Shobhava is what is realization here. It's not about you realizing this God is true, that God is true, or whatever, the world is true, or who cares? It is realizing your own real essential nature. And when that essential nature comes forth, your living life animates through you spontaneously. Whatever job you do is your expression of spontaneity. Whatever thoughts you have is just blossoming of your spontaneity. That's all Tantra is saying. And are people ready? Yes, I mean, I wish. Are there some chosen one? No, really, everybody is authorized. The whole revolution of Tantra was so that this caste-based, structured, hierarchical, male, like only these people can practice. No, this was a revolution at one time, so everybody could come. But does that mean that everybody does come and gets the whole thing of it? No, still then, there is intensity of people wanting to come, intensity of people wanting to learn, and those are the determining factors that are always there, and we can't do anything about it.
So this just reminds me that when I was growing up, I was considered a very disciplined and punctual kind of child, and I used to have a timetable of my own, and I used to strictly adhere to that timetable. Now, in the last few decades of my spiritual exploration, I realized that it was not discipline, but it was just that I was passionate about hundreds of things, and I had to do dozens of things every day, and I could not do them if I didn't start at a particular time and stop it at a given time.
Yeah.
Now, when I share that with my friends, very few of them probably feel that I'm not telling the truth.
Yeah.
I'm like kind of misleading them, but most well-wishers believe that I'm just being humble. Right, so there's so much of the tendency of self-sabotage in people, even in very well-meaning people, that they are unable to accept these kind of suggestions that could actually liberate them, but they want to be more bound and more tight controlled, right? So given that this is the state of the world right now, like everybody desperately wants a leader, right? And people don't want to be powerful, and they don't want to rule the world. They just want to be in the best books of whoever is ruling the world. Right? So how do you help people out of this tendency to be small, mediocre, self-sabotaging, bound? How do you liberate people?
It's a remodeling of human psyche is not a small challenge. In our society, particularly in the modern Western society, we decide gender before the babies are born, and they have these balloons for the boys as the blue and girls as the pink, and they are only just conceived of, okay? And the babies have no idea that they are supposed to choose these colors. And then they have these birthday parties, the best ever. And then they are treated like prince and princesses. And what happens that I find my prominence, I find my centrality, that I mean a lot. And I want to get that to influence my home, my school, my society. What do we do then? We create social anarchy, family anarchy, because then there is no family structure, because like in old structures, we would have elderly people based, controlled, guided type of family structure, and the social structure where the youngers with less experience would be more obliged to listen to the elders, and today it is not the case. Not that we should go back, but what I mean is, how are we constituting the ego of a child? And the whole modern psychoanalysis is based on restoration of the ego. So basically, the first thing we do is we give individuals a fake identity. We make his nationality, his religion, his language, his gender, and whatever the political leaning as the core of creating his ego. And then based on that ego, we can control his behavior. We can project certain activities, so we can advertise and make him buy certain things, or make him do certain activities, or have certain jobs. And therefore a human is conditioned. That is good for institutions. That is good for the society with a dictatorship. Although they call this democracy, democracy is not just about people having some voting rights. Democracy would be about people having the freedom to think about oneself and the rest of the world. We have all our education models are about to preach them to carve their subjectivity the way that we want them to be. We want them to think who they are. We do not ever let them to discover on their own, because it is chaotic for society, because we cannot predict how they are going to act if they are free subjects. For it is very difficult for the government and the industries to control these individuals who are free, autonomous to discover their subjectivity. What if they do not enslave themselves for profit generation? Because this is all the societies today, profit oriented towards profit generation. Every subject has to enslave willingly, unwillingly, and we are all told of some kind of dream of we will be free, or we can do whatever. So we are purchasing our 60, 70 years of life for the dream that we do not acquire. We are already dead. Our sensory faculties surrender. And then the dream is still, the promises are still there, not fulfilled. So therefore, the bigger problem, the bigger challenge of Tantra is about this articulation and engineering of our subjectivity. And the bigger contribution of Tantra would also be in liberating people from these engineered subjectivity, to free people, to help them deconstruct their own ego. But that is where Tantra could come. But then these already best subjects, most beautiful kings and queens are not going to come to the teacher and say, you can strike me, like you may have seen some Zen stories, like, and the teacher just spanks, and then or so. You go to gurus today. What do gurus do? You are the best person ever. What an amazing being
customer
you are.
Service.
Exactly.
Gurus offer the best customer service.
The better the compliment the gurus give, the better the tips gurus get. So the role of the guru was to shatter your ego, to dismantle your ego, so that you can start looking into who you are, to rediscover yourself, because you realize that it was all a vacuum, it was all like a hollow, and that you projected yourself to be something that never existed there. That is what they meant by realization, honestly. We are imposing God and God and God. No, there is no realization there. When you think yourself God, you are not realizing. You are imposing yet another ego. Oh my gosh. You are supposed to realize the basis, the possibility. You have to be the foundation. And we are not recognizing this. We're not allowing this. And this is the fundamental problem, I would say, today.
So, Acharya ji, in the Sanatana Dharma, the whole concept of genius and intelligence is considered like a divine inspiration. And we have many cases, for example, if you look at Kalidas or Ramanujan, it's quite explicitly acknowledged that they had the divine grace. Like Ramanujan acknowledged that Devi comes in his dreams and writes those formulas. And Kalidas got his blessings from Kali for his literary abilities. So these are some very well-known cases, but I believe that almost every genius is a kind of divine inspiration. Mm-hmm. And we have this idea even in the Western tradition. For example, I saw a movie on Mozart. The movie is called Amadeus. And there, his most arch rival, the court musician, he looks at his notes and he says, my God, it looks like he's taking dictation from the divine. So what are your personal views on the process of creativity and genius? And how do you perceive it in your own life, in your own creative process?
There is a word for creativity in Sanskrit called pratibha. So anybody who has some kind of creative power, we say he has pratibhaman, he has this pratibha. Pratibha actually is the very consciousness being aware of itself. The most intricate mode of consciousness, that is self-revealing or self-aware. That self-aware act, the self-aware part of consciousness is what we are calling pratibha. Meaning, the more we become self-aware, the more we become intuitive and also creative. So it's a ratio in which we are introvert. So it is impossible for you to find someone extremely creative and always out in the world and not having some type of introvert nature. Even if he is completely immersed in everyday activity, he has this total awareness of reflexivity, thinking back, seeing his modes of consciousness constantly. How does it unfold? There are two ways we say. One is a natural course, a natural source of consciousness from the collective, in the collective sense that the totality itself, Shiva, is creating the world, creating us, becoming us, and that is pratibha, to become many. And for us to recognize this singularity is pratibha. Because what does these two modes, what do these two modes mean is, in the singularity, recognizing its diversity, there is a differentiation. Pratibha needs differentiation, self-differentiation. I need to be different from you. That is where pratibha comes. I want to be creative. You are dancing this way and I want to find a different way to dance. You are beating the drum this way, I want to beat the drum differently. You are writing poems this way, I want to write my poems differently. A need for self-differentiation is always at the heart of creativity. And then also synthesis. Synthesis is a mechanism. Like, we cannot create something out of nothing. We mix up things from here and there. Fusion. Many times we infuse different things, little ingredient from here, little from there. Now, if we are doing philosophy, we read some Western philosophers, some Indian philosophers. Some Indian philosophers from one compared to the next. And then historically, everybody who has created has learned from so many different places, has infused so many different ideas. So we have to see, where does this creativity begin? With the urge to be unique, to be different. And how is this achieved? Synthetically. Actually, it is not by simply differentiating. We want to be different, but for that difference is actualized in the mode of synthesis. These are opposite modes actually. Synthesis is not a differentiation. But with this process of self-differentiation, we discover our individuality. But then when we recognize we need to do this something creative, and then we have to synthesize different modes of activities, different thoughts, and then we discover in the synthetic level is something new. And that is where creativity, pratibha, is discovered. Thank you.
What you said could really revolutionize education and learning, because as of now most of education and learning is about catching up, not finding their uniqueness, but to even catch up to maybe the greats or do what other successful people are doing. Even for musicians, it's about recreating what Mozart did or A.R. Rahman did. But this whole notion about pratibha being finding your uniqueness is something that could really revolutionize how education is perceived. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Acharya, going forward, you on the same track, you recently composed several shlokas and stavas, which are now being converted into a series of albums as well. So could you share with us something about the whole creative process that was involved in the creation of these compositions, and also a bit of what are these compositions about?
I have chosen a spiritual theme, divine prayers actually, to compose in Sanskrit. It's my pastime, to tell you the truth, so it's different from what my job demands, but there is a deeper thing going on with that. The deeper thing is experimenting with creativity in a different mode than the way we are using in modern academia. In the modern academia, we start a paper, we have a thesis, and for that thesis we have supportive arguments, and then we have counter arguments, and then we come to some synthesis, and then we have some references to prove this is the case, and paper is done. But that is not the only way of human consciousness. We have blocked another process, the process of the Rishis. The process of the Rishi is not a synthetic process. It is not an analytical process either. It is an intuitive process. It is a process in which you allow your subjectivity to dissolve. It is a process in which you become nothing, and the thing, whatever it is, comes to you. The process in which we recognize truth as the truth. Because in modern academia, what do? I want to prove something. Do I know this is the truth or not? Honestly, who cares? As long as I have something to support my argument, it looks like true, the job is done. I have reviewers and they see my evidence is solid. But and another scholar publishes completely opposite of what I am arguing. He also has the argument. And then it's okay, we keep publishing, talking non-stop, and academia keeps running in its own world. We are constructing categories. Our categories do not need to be true or false. We just enjoy. It's like fun. It's like a chess game. You can't say, oh, you had been moving the same pawn in that board, now you start a new game and you are still moving the pawn. What is wrong with you? That is the rule of the game. But what is Rishi's way of thinking? There is this intuitive manifesting of consciousness, not controlled by your analytical or synthetic processes. A surge of what is within you as Svabhava, the flow of Svabhava, that flow is not guided, controlled by your mind, your thought, your language, your culture, because you have surrendered all of that. And what we believe is the truth speaks through you. You are not the beholder of the truth, you are the vessel of it. You do not create the truth, you surrender to the truth. When you surrender your ego, your surrender, you completely erase your individuation. What happens then? You are not erased from the totality. The totality comes to you. Just for example, let us say every drop of water in the ocean has its own personality. And the drop of water starts saying, I'm perfect. And then there are other drops of water, maybe they contain tiny bit of color or tiny bit of this thing. And then these drops are fighting, I'm so better than you. What if these drops give up their droppiness? At the end, the ocean. So my argument is, when your finitude is so strong, you are not able to recognize yourself as infinite. And you create your own barrier. And only the light that comes inside becomes your light. But imagine when you say, I am for the totality, then all the light fallen anywhere is your own light. And the knowledge coming from any source is your own knowledge. And then an individual transcends his individuation, but at the same time he acquires knowledge of what lies there in the totality. So we could, theoretically speaking, give up these separating mechanisms, and then if I have nothing to separate my ego from yours, then there is an access to whatever you have known, and then I would also know that. That is the basic idea. So individuation is dissolved and the totality manifests. A drop stops calling himself a drop and says, I am the ocean. You can't say he is delusional, because there is no ocean in isolation of all the drops. So he is the ocean too, the drop is the ocean too. So this is what creativity and all the getting intuitive power and how we can hone, develop. We have, in order for us to develop the faculty of creativity, we have to be willing to go to the source, not where we are differentiated. And many of the things that are called creative in modern society are not even creative. Why? Because it's like pick up things, do random stuffs, like if somebody puts a banana on the canvas and then somebody buys that as a piece of art for like hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know. It's a statement. So every act is not like an amazing expression of the inner modes of being. So creativity is also not understood the same way here and there. You know, just in the modern mechanism of productivity, these artists, no matter what type of art they do, they have to show productivity. They are forced to be productive. And if the people of the earlier times would be productive in an occasional manner, now today I have to be productive in a daily manner. I'm forced. And that productivity doesn't work that way. It starts declining. So that is the situation we are into. Thank you.
So, just one further point to this. So, initially when you were speaking of pratibha, you said it's about finding that self-differentiation. And in this particular response you mentioned about creativity as being one with the totality. So if I bring these two ideas together, what I see is that creativity is essentially about receiving, and receiving from the divine and letting that divine to manifest through you in a unique way. So you are not creating your uniqueness, but you are allowing the divine to manifest uniquely within you. Is that understanding correct?
From the Tantric perspective or Trikasaiva perspective, there is no separation of the divine and the individual. And I do not recognize my divinity in isolation from my own being in the world. But that also means that the divine should not be separated from me either. Not just that my individuation should continue, but even the totality should be speaking through me. So what does this mean? Arjuna is in the flow. From the Bhagavad Gita example, there are two Arjunas I always talk about. One is this vengeful Arjuna, who has endured so much in his life. They're being tricked into so many different things. And his wife almost being raped. And he wants vengeance. And that Arjuna just dies in the Mahabharata. The first thing is because it was not ready for the level of battle that was to unfold. The second Arjuna, the educated Arjuna, the enlightened, liberated Arjuna, is the Arjuna who has given up his ego. He has given up his agency, and then he just one with the flow. He knows spontaneously he has to let what has to happen to unfold. And he's just being there, an instrument, nimitta matra. He's just as instrument there. That's it. And that is what is very big a problem for us today, because if we are creating our ego as too big than what it should be, we are failing our society to go back to ever recognize their own originality. All these societal egos are not original things. What is our original identity? What is our original I amness? We don't know, because we have been bombarded with so many essential identities that appear at the time, but they also block our own realization of who we are permanently, and we become an instrument that I just already talked about. And therefore this retrieving to the source, of course, is the way out for us to rediscover our creativity. We need to rediscover our creativity. Not like I made a painting. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it's not all. To create is not always about making the best painting or best poem. If you can think anything original, you just can cook what you like to eat, you do little farming in a way that if you are able to do something that makes you happy just in the act of doing, not waiting for its result, then you have already been creative, you have been one with the flow, and pratibha is flowing through you.
That statement that the vengeful Arjun had to give way to the enlightened Arjun to win that war, that's the most profound statement on Bhagavad Gita I've ever heard. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So, just a light-hearted comment that even in Greek tradition, being inspired was used to be referred to as being kissed by the muses. Muses were the divine fairies, you could say. So any artist getting inspired was said to be kissed by the muses. So at least maybe the idea of being kissed by the muses should inspire at least the youngsters to be more creative rather than just follow the broken path. So thank you so much for this answer.